Hello, everyone. This is a presentation on the misconception of how natural selection involves organisms trying to adapt by Jordan Anhauser, Mareem, James, Haley, and Amber. So first, we want to start out with what is natural selection. So natural selection is a process in which organisms that have a phenotypic advantage over others of the same species survive longer and reproduce more, allowing them to multiply and further their genotype along generations. This process continues over multiple generations, allowing for the advantageous phenotype to become more and more common in the population of species. However, it's not done by conscious act of the species, since these individuals already have the trait. The organism's goal are all just to reproduce and survive with the traits that they already possess. So, what is adaptation? Adaptation is a change that's happening within a population to make organisms able to fit in their new environment or changes within the environment. So this is a process that occurs from natural selection and helps the organism reproduce and survive. Adaptation is heritable, and this is what helps organisms to fit in, survive, and then hopefully reproduce. So, does natural selection cause adaptation intentionally? The answer is no, it does not cause adaptation intentionally. The whole process happens randomly. So these adaptation skills are traits that are passed on to these organisms. The process just occurs through reproduction, and organisms have no control over it. So essentially, when two organisms mate, they do not get to choose what traits that their offspring has. So this is just a process that happens through random assortment. And one thing that I've learned in my classes is that science has no agenda. So the process of reproduction is random. So when does natural selection occur? So this process happens over a long time. For it to happen, there needs to be variation within a population. These variations are brought out by different phenotypes and different genotypes. The genotype presented is given to the offspring by the parents through random assortment, and there's also a risk of mutation. And the genotype difference happens from random variants with alleles that are already present in the population. And once again, there's no trying. So it occurs as organisms that tend to have more favorable traits in the environment are able to survive longer, reproduce with each other, and then pass these favorable traits onto their offspring. So, what is the process of natural selection? The process of natural selection is when an individual with a phenotypic or genotypic advantage over others in the population are able to survive longer and able to reproduce more. That way, their genotype is more likely to be spread throughout the population. So this goes on for many generations and allows a specific phenotype to become more common in the population. Once again, this is not done because these animals are doing it on purpose or these organisms are doing it on purpose. It's just traits that are present within the population and are thriving, so they're able to reproduce, making them more common within a population. So, what does natural selection favor? So, natural selection tends to favor the organisms with higher fitness. These organisms tend to have a better chance over others to pass their genes down to the upcoming generation because they're better able to adapt to the environment and reproduce. So this has a lot to do with genes. So genes are present within a genome, and each organism has genes that essentially either will help them survive and reproduce, or they do not carry the genes that are favored by the environment. So an individual does not have the ability to try and change their genes. Your genes are what they are. They're what you're born with. But natural selection can give an advantage to later populations because if an individual does not have these genes, they are not likely to survive and they are not likely to reproduce. So the alleles that do not help these organisms are likely to become less frequent in the population because the ones that possess them will not be able to produce offspring. So new alleles can arise through mutation, And these mutations, if they tend to help an organism survive in the environment, then over, more generations, it could become more popular in the population. So what is occurring is that natural selection involves mutations that a population may already have and tends to bring favor to them. So these traits help individuals that survive and spread their genome. So if certain organisms are suffering, it may be hard for them to survive if they are unable to reproduce due to certain predation, sexual selection, or other form of natural selection that will eliminate it from the population. An example of a misconception of an organism trying to adapt themselves to survive is the chameleon. So when a chameleon wants to, hide themselves from a predator, they're able to change color and blend in to perfect themselves. And it's not that they wanted to do that or tried to do that. It is a process due to a random mutation that helped a chameleon blend in to survive. And this is how they are able to survive and grow and spread their alleles down throughout the population. So they could not change colors originally. It happened through mutations that passed down through reproduction. So in conclusion, individual organisms themselves cannot adapt and change. Rather, over time, a population is able to adapt and change through natural selection, which is a random force in nature. Thank you.